if there is a statistical renaissance that we can discuss, and I hope we kind of reach a consensus here today, then I think we need to think about today is which is the road ahead. So the MDG, as Pavi in the background note for the meetings as well notes in his first sentence, there is now a call for a data revolution in development. So I think we need to talk about what is the kind of evidence that is needed for development, and for whom, whose kind of development. It is, if we should have a serious about filling, if we only should be serious about filling the gap in the previous Millennium Development Goal data set, where there are more gaps than there are observations, real observations, it relies on a lot of extrapolations, then we will require a lot more funding. Who should pay for that? Is that a donor-driven statistical agenda? And then in that sense, how do we know that donor-driven statistical agendas do coincide with the priority areas needed by citizens? We know very well that those, I think Ben writes somewhere, you need to measure, to manage. The same kind of way of thinking about it is that the ones who owns the evidence also owns the policy. So I think that very much here it's on politicians to wake up to that fact that they need to prioritize their own statistical office and make sure it delivers the data they need. If they I think, has been the major pattern, the ones I've observed, a very, if not the major, but at least an important pattern, is that there is a lot of ad hoc funding and that data collection is funded by per diem, a particular ad hoc survey funding, which drives the data that is needed by a particular donor at a particular time. That's not the same as a long-run statistical priority for the nation. And I think that debate needs to be taken, and I think it's very important that national governments in Botswana and elsewhere do wake up to that. Because if there is a demand for a data revolution, if there is increasing demand for evidence-based policy, as Pauli has said as well highlights, then this evidence will be supplied. It is particularly important here for statistical offices to assert themselves so that they make sure that they get a say in how this evidence is supplied. There is a danger of helicopter statistics, the kind of surveys where some experts fly in, like with the DHS types of surveys, for instance, and big money coming in, and the lasting legacy is a data set. Of course, there are other things as well, but first and foremost, what we get is a data set. I think we need to think about the data revolution. It's not on evidence. We need to invest in institutions. It's not, crucial example is the difference between investing in how to monitor stuff. We just need to invest in the capability to monitor. And those are two different things. So that means that you do not just pay for the data set, you pay for the ability for sustained monitoring. And I think that is a crucial difference to be made. So there is a lot of talk of governance, there's a lot of talk of accountability and institutions in the development community ever since the mid-1990s. And I think here is a real chance to invest in a real institution. It's called the Statistical Office, and it is what their business is, real accountability. So I invite you to think about how we can assert that into the current Millennium Development Goals agendas to get statistical capacity building on the agenda. So some points for discussion before I will be taken off the stage here. One thing, we know that the Paris 21 has already done great work on drawing up the national strategies for statistics development. Are these documents visible enough? And are they armed with the right kinds of carrots and sticks? We all know that the production of statistics is a coordination problem. If we take that coordination problem seriously, and we think about statistics as a public goods, we need to think about signing up to some institutions of self-constraint. And this is particularly a challenge to international donors, international organization donors, to say, I will not pay for certain data to be available, I will follow a statistical plan. There is a plethora of initiatives. Paris 21, I already mentioned, StatCaps, GDDS, the African Center of Statistics at UNECA, Afristats.com, AFDB, and so forth. Are we better served? That's for discussion, open up. I don't have the best answer to that. Are we better served by a multi-pronged approach, or is there room for some weeding? And is there time for a more concentrated approach? I think now is the time. Statistics has never been this central in development discussions. When Bill Gates read poor numbers, in conclusion was that serious investment in African statistics was needed. And at UNDP recently, the debate on Millennium Development Goals, it's seriously on the agenda to maybe include statistical capacity as a part of Millennium Development Goals. There are opportunities, there are also threats. I talked about the danger of providing evidence at all costs, and let's seize this important moment. And I think I should end on one particular note, quoting from an Financial Times editorial written in October 2013, which talked about Africa at dawn. And one of the things why is there so much interest around economic statistics? Why do suddenly people care when there are base year revisions in Ghana and one forthcoming in Nigeria? It's because African countries are becoming economically more important. It's because many countries are becoming important players in big international economic market. That means entering bond markets and so forth, and having a stake in commercial banks. And therefore, I think there is quite new types of data needed for economic governance. And I think currently we do not have the type of data needed for it. And I think in the Financial Times, it says, international agencies should prioritize help for the region, but Africa also needs to help itself. Too often the continent's leaders have punished Western scholars for questioning government numbers. Critical voices have been excluded from regional economic forums by means of informal bans. Therefore, I'm so pleased to be here today and addressing you, and I want to thank you again for this opportunity. I think taking criticism, as the Financial Times concludes, taking criticism on board would be a worthwhile step. Granting independence to national statistical agencies would be another. Official statistics can only be credible if governments are willing to voice inconvenient truths. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to Botswana, and welcome. And I'm sure you can see the GDP of Botswana just from the airport to here. Because GDP, you can see it even when you walk around. And you can't tell me that Botswana's figures are wrong, because you saw the GDP yourself. On your work as well, I'm surprised that we are always, or even annually, assessed by IMF, by World Bank, by other economic giants who go around African countries and making assessment and indicating the economic growth of African countries and how they are going up. You come in and say, we are misleading. Are you saying these assessments are the ones who are misleading, because they are also saying African economy is rising? I would like to say what you are saying to IMF, and they should know that you are also, our figures are being confirmed by these international organizations. So if they are misleading, and because you are working with them, we together with them, the IMF, the World Bank, we are both misleading you, not even America, because America believes in IMF. They agree and accept the figures from IMF. So you are the one who's misleading the whole world.
So the final one, say, what should we do about the book then? Because ultimately, I think that's what everybody here wants to hear. So, should we ban it? Well, my observation is that it never works. So for this to be effective, we have to buy the copyright, withdraw all copies from the shelves and burn them. And that's obviously not practical. Okay. So what else can we do? We can conduct a concerted campaign against it. But I still remember when I was a young student, Salman Rushdie wrote the book, Satanic Verses. I never heard of him until there was a fatwa issued against him. Then the book became a bestseller. So making a campaign against it is also futile. So some have said, why don't we ignore it altogether and hope that the controversy will disappear with time? Okay, maybe that could work. So what should be done? I thought the book should be seen as a scholarly attempt to document and understand the production of GDP statistics in the countries visited, not in Africa, but in the country visited to start with. The ethnographic approach used has had some level of success in identifying some of the problems faced in the countries visited. The study is, however, descriptive, and the author acknowledges that and does not lend itself to the gross generalization that it makes. So further in-depth and more quantitative studies are thus required in order to generalize the findings. So thank you.
Now, I have three methodological issues that I need to talk about regarding this book. We are told in the book that the author visited a number of statistical offices in Africa to collect information. And I have heard from some heads of statistics offices who are visited that actually the author sneaked into the offices, talked to low-level staff, and really did not get the full picture of what happens in some of these offices. Secondly, I want to fault the author, as Pari has pointed out, for failure to consult some key players in statistical development in Africa. In particular, we have regional economic communities which are playing a fairly significant role in statistical development. Within those communities, at continental level, we have African Union Commission, we have ADB and ECA, which are really playing a big role in statistical development in Africa. In fact, in the case of ECA, this work started in 1958 when this organization was established to foster development in Africa. And the statistics division was the first division established by the UN Economic Commission for Africa. I also fault the author for failure to consult African statistical elders, like Chief Ajayi, former Director General of the Federal Office of Statistics Nigeria, like Lamine Diop, who won the Professor P.C. Mahanobis International Prize for Statistics last year. And of course, Pari, the father of modern statistics in Africa, and the list is long. And these giants are embodiments of African history on statistical development. I think you would have been well off getting in touch with them to pick a few things from them. And very, very finally, Chair, actually, my forthcoming book on the dawning of a statistical revolution in Africa is expected to go well beyond what my good professor has written about statistical challenges. In that book, I'll be providing more informed and nuanced narrative about statistical development in Africa, and of course by someone who has been part of the exciting statistical work in the continent for 38 years. So I'll stop here, Chair, but I'll end by asking two rhetorical questions. And the first question is, which equation is Professor Jerven trying to solve? And the second question is, on whose behalf is he working on statistical development in Africa? I rest my case. Thank you.
You want to be the Messiah. But there are some of us who have been missionaries that have been in the trench looking through these things. If we had discussed together, we would have been partners without necessarily offending anyone.
My name's James Ntozi from Makerere University, and I've been in statistics for the last 46 years. So in a way, I find it offensive to find someone who may have been in this field for a few years or casually done some research to come and give us this kind of book. Firstly, when you look at the methods he used, some are casual. We know two major methods in collecting data. One is qualitative methods. He did it casually. He didn't interview key players. Two, quantitative methods. He only visited 8 out of 54 African countries. I don't know what kind of sample that was. Now, what progress has been made in African statistics? We know that in 1940, even before, there were some statistics, especially census data. This data was nothing to talk about. It used to be collected by the colonialists through assemblies, through head counts, but now we are talking of censuses which are modern censuses. And we no longer use indirect methods to massage data in order to get indicators. Isn't that progress now? Two, in the past, our politicians, especially the political leaders, were not very much interested in our statistics. I think there has been a lot of progress in terms of political leadership in improving our statistics. So I think this book is based more on hearsay, is based more on politics, and I'm not sure whether the author knows what statistics is all about. Thank you very much.
I finished reading the book and I turned to the cover. I said to myself, the title should have been, I quote, "How I Was Misled by Selective Research on Statistical Development in Africa." I rest my case. Thank you.